newest. I'm going to sing. Did you hear my wife? I'm going to practice all week and see if I could keep my voice from cracking. You know, because I start off all right. And this will become part of it. You hear me start, sounds like I have a decent voice. But just wait for the second or the third line. And then you want to know, what's up? The same thing that happens with my wife. When I'm at home and I hear some nice song, and I said, honey, come, dance with me. I hear the beat. And I start off on the beat. And I'm thinking, and then I get lost in her. Suddenly the beat is there, and I'm over here. It's the same thing that happens with the song. But you know, the Lord had something in mind. He knew that this young lady was going to sing for me. And He spared you. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. But you know, as I listened to the song, I said, my alabaster box, my wife, she's the perfume that God has spread on my life. Because I'm not always as nice as I need to be. And I kind of use her as my barometer, if you would. Sometimes when I think something and I says, Ali, what do you think about it? It is very rarely that her thoughts is not far above mine. Very rarely. It happens once in a while. Right, Ali? Now, that's a little preamble. And there's another part of this little preamble that I'd like to do, if you would. Ali said she would be hiding, and indeed she is. I didn't know where she was. I just heard the ha! Now I see she's sitting right behind somebody, so I can't see her face. Because she's my default. I go back to her. But I want to take this time to thank you for being here. Not for my sake, because I don't really come up here for my sake, and I probably say this almost every time I speak, because it's my focus. My focus is that when we leave here today, there's something that I've said, something that has been bothering me about myself, generally, that when I'm finished sharing with you, that you and I can rise to higher heights. That is my goal. I don't want to look bad whilst I'm up here. I'd like to look as good as Tony. I thought about him this morning. I said, you know, I remember that sermon where he seemed to have answered every question that you could think of. I said, wow, that was thorough. I really enjoyed it. And then I told him, I'm looking forward to hearing you the next time. And I am. And of course, I can't stop here and not think of Marceline. Marceline, I thought about just reading the scriptures as you said and getting off. But I looked at the time. And for sure, we're going to be out of here at a decent time. I tend to go on here. I came in today. I'm telling you, this is to an extent where I am. My preamble is always long and the sermon is always short. Sometimes. I took that back, you know. I saw, as we were pulling up, I saw Daisy, and I was very happy. And you know why? Because I haven't seen you for a while, and you were in my heart. Welcome back. Then I looked back, and I saw Connie. And Connie, I heard you didn't have the surgery. But I'm so, so happy to see you. And I'm still looking forward to what the Lord will do for you. And then right in front of Connie, I saw this young lady with a lovely smile. You know, I see Amy all the time. And we tend to take for granted those whom we see, Amy and Sabrina and the boys. But I saw that young lady and she smiled and I said, what a lovely smile. Not that I love Amy's smile, but I see it all the time. And I was so happy to see you. And each and every one of you add to this place in some way. And so that's why I say to you, thank you for coming. I want to thank Joyce. I'm not going to call everyone. I want to thank the elders, because I couldn't be up here unless they have had a little discussion and decided it's okay to bring me back, especially after the last debacle. It may not have been so for you, but I left my notes home and I still remember it as a debacle. Today I brought my notes. I hope I'll do better. I want to thank the pastor, because this is a rostrum assigned to him, and regardless of what the The elders say, without his okay, I couldn't possibly be here. And most, I want to thank the Lord. He's given me an opportunity to grow within myself. Never have I spoken and the Lord haven't spoken to me in the process. Because as I said, speak about things that are concerning me. Things that is bothering me, things, areas where I need to grow. God is a good God. He hasn't failed me yet. So before we entertain this idea of but God said, let us have another word of prayer. Father, send your spirit to soften our hearts so that we can grow to be more like your ideal. For your glory, for our good, good of our fellow men. Bless us to the tent. Pray in Jesus' name. I have a problem. I think it'll work out all right. Gives me a little crutch to hold on to. Like Andrew. Very playful. He's kind of like me. And I haven't lost it yet. I should have by now, right? See. Ali and I were speaking. Ali, we were talking about church folk. Not really here. I don't even know if anybody here was in our mind at the time. But I'm talking about church folk in general. And especially me, actually, because it's coming in there. Good and bad in the same package. You know, there's a little New Testament text that speaks about having sweet and bitter water from the same well. And there's a problem with that. Because we don't represent God very well when we do that. For the last few weeks, we have been considering the book of 1 Samuel. And our primary focus has been on David and Saul. Saul, for lack of a better word, the antagonist in the story. He's always pursuing David. He's always trying to kill him, and without reason. David, who seems to have everything together, just doing the right things at the right time. And I named my son David because David is my hero in the Bible. And he wasn't my hero simply because he was doing everything good at the right time, but because he showed human frailty. And I emphasize that because I'm coming back to it. So I like David. Somebody whom I would like to emulate. But God calls us to be more than David. As much as I check myself against Allison, she is not my measuring stick. She falls far short. She's better than I am, it is true, but she still falls far short. And within church here, let me go back to a little story from East New York. I knew this lady, lovely lady. If you walked in here on a Sabbath and she noticed that somehow you weren't doing well because she could see by maybe what you're wearing from head to foot or something like that, she didn't go around looking. She just noticed. She would do something like she would go to the church. See brothers and sisters. But generally she wouldn't even do that. She would not use the person's name. She would go to the membership and she would, I'm picking up some funds, help me out, I want to help somebody. She generally would not tell. I don't know if she ever has. And this is not something she has done once or twice. I was there for about 12 years and I know she has done it several times. Within that same person, she had some grandchildren that were not the nicest kids. Say anything about her grandchildren, she would flip them. She would. That little boy, one of the little boys dropped David. David was about, I don't even think he was 7. You're watching that wrestling on TV and how they yoke you from behind. And he dropped David backwards after David was like this on his head. And I was mad, but I heard that sister say something about people are picking on her grandchildren. And I said, I just left. I didn't appreciate it, but I just left. This is all too common. But I want to go somewhere. I want to go here. I made a reference to 2 things, but I wish I had made a reference to when Samuel first met Saul. I'm not going back all the way. There you go, 11:45. When Samuel met Saul, the equivalent of when we first meet Jesus. When someone invites us to church and we have decided that this is what we want. No? I want to be in church. I remember still, I can't tell you the anniversary. I heard people speaking of anniversaries. I just know I was about 20 years old when someone invited me to this church. And to encourage me, she said to me, next Sabbath, meet me in the same corner and I'll take you to church. I said, no, I'm kind of independent. I said, I know where the church is and I like it. I'll be back. And I went on my own after that. A lot of rough spots in between there and here, though. Kind of what I'm talking about this month. I went back. I decided that this was the place for me, and I was going to stay. I used to eat and sleep this. I would go home, read till I fell asleep. And I'd get up the next day. I remember going to my job and telling this old Jewish fellow about Jesus. And I guess he got tired of hearing from me. So he said, that carpenter, he was trying to put me down in some way, disarm me, because I was talking too much about Jesus. Something happened along. Talk about that. You know, I once heard that when you take lobster, I don't believe it's true because I tried to Google it and I couldn't find it. When you take a lobster and you put him in a pot with water, as the temperature rises in the water, the lobster is not aware of it until it's too late and he's cooked. I don't think it's true. But that's what basically happens to us as Christians. It's a fraud. We get into the pot, all hot and sweaty for Jesus, if you would. And then something happens and we fry. And sometimes we get lukewarm, which is a terrible state. Sometimes you get cold, freezing cold. That, I want to say, even your mother doesn't want to own you as a child, that she birthed you. And I've been to both extremes after having met Jesus. Saul began like I did, loving the Lord, wanting to serve the Lord. He didn't think that he was worthy of being king of Israel. But he started off with all the gusto he could find. But somewhere along the way, he stopped thinking about the Lord and started to think about himself. And I think that's what's happening at some point in our lives. We get lukewarm like the lobster, if you would, and we don't even know it. It is usually some crisis that comes into our lives that makes us look at ourselves and say, when did I get here? Because after all, you're going to church every Sabbath, you're still reading your Bible, you're still praying, you have a family, you're having family worship, you're doing everything, but somehow you're getting cold and you don't know it. Or you're getting warm like the lobster. Satan is getting ready to cook. I remember when Saul met Samuel, you know what he said to him? He greeted him and he says, behold, I've done everything that the Lord has said to do. Right after he disobeyed God. You think he knew that he was getting warm to the point of boiling? He didn't know. He believed what he said. And we believe that this cannot happen to us. Do you believe that Peter, when he was speaking to Jesus, when he says, I will die with you, you think he had doubts about that? He didn't. As many of us feel that somehow we can handle this business on our own until the heat comes and then we find out who we really are. Speaking to my wife this week, I said, God doesn't test us. We all say God is testing me. God doesn't have to test. God knows from before the creation of man to the end of man till we're in heaven. He knows it all, so he doesn't need to test us. Any trials that come our way is for our benefit. So when the heat comes, it's for our benefit. It's to show us where we are lacking in character and where we need to go. So, Saul started off that way, but then started to listen to the people. What he told Samuel when he was discovered? People made keep the best. And it went from the people to another excuse. David is going to take my kingdom, so I'm going to kill him before he gets it. My son is conspiring against me with David. The women are singing about David. He was obsessed with David, and he stopped looking at his problems. He stopped introspection. He didn't see that he was going down that slippery slope. All he knew is that he needed to kill David. Sometimes we get so obsessed, as I did recently. Something that was said that wasn't anywhere near the truth. But I've decided I wasn't going to deal with it, and I'm not. But I became obsessive about it. I just obsessed. I just obsessed. And the Lord said, you need to start looking at yourself. Well, let's talk about some stuff from Samuel, because I'm going to get in there. That wasn't my preamble. This is well into it. I went back this morning real quick, and I looked at 1 Samuel chapter 15, where God basically took the kingdom from Saul. He gave him more than one opportunity. I didn't go back to count them out. To straighten up and fly right. Saul continued to obsess about David. Instead of looking to the Lord, he just went from one problem to the next. And so eventually God says, okay, I'm taking the kingdom from you. In chapter 16, David was anointed by the prophet, and David knew it. And David was even afraid, because he knew that Saul was already against him. But I'm not going there, because that's not my assignment. I just wanted to refer you back to it, because it comes into the message. Chapter 24. It was read to you this morning. I want to read some of it to you, because this is going Mercy Lynn's way. We're going to get into the word. I don't like to read from up here because I like to maintain eye contact all the time. But I have to get here. So it says, now it happened, when Saul had returned from following the Philistines, that it was told him, saying, take note. Really hold it. Take note. David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi. Then Saul took 3,000 men. It had about 600. I don't know if he had 600 at that point. But he took 3,000 men and decided to pursue David. He went out to kill David, if that's not plain. David knew that he was looking for him, to kill him. David went into a cave to hide. Well, let's say he didn't. That's my imagination, really. It doesn't say. Suppose it was the heat of the day like it is here in Sebring, and David went into the cave to beat the heat. But here comes Saul. I get different ideas. One translation said he went into rest. Next one gave the idea that he needed to relieve himself, and so he went in there for that. But I think it might have been a combination of both, because guess what happened? Saul went to sleep, and David is in the back of the cave. See that back room there? Who's back there right now? Do you know? As far as I know, nobody. I'm just playing with you. Well, David was back there. Saul is out here. Saul don't know. His men is outside, got in the mouth of the cave. Nothing can happen to me in here, so he relaxed, went to sleep. David's friends tested him. Aha! This is the day that God was talking about. This is your opportunity to kill Saul because he's pursuing you. This is it. We know that God has anointed you to be king. And David says, who can lift his hand? Lord's anointed, he built us. And that's why I went back to chapter 16. David had been anointed too. If we want to justify what we do, we can find reasons. God anointed me. God knows he's no good. He's trying to kill me. Not only that, my friends are encouraging me to kill him. And to tell you the truth, if that was me, I would have killed him. I grew up killing chickens. But guess what? Right now, I don't feel I could kill a chicken. Good thing, right? Good thing. I'm not seeing you because you love chickens. But when I was a little boy, you used to do it. I would have killed him. I would have killed him because, you know what? I don't get dangerous as a person until I'm afraid. My wife, if she sees something crawling, she will kill it. Period. Doesn't care what it is. If she can get her hands on it, she will kill it. Because she don't like anything crawl. I don't know if she thinks that the thing is going to come back and walk on her or what have you. But she would just kill it. Me, if you're outside in nature and I can let you live, I'll let you live. The moment that the ants or something bite me though, I shouldn't have done that. Just like, I kill it. And when I was growing up, I used to fight a lot. Pre-pubescence. And very little after that, but I did after that. And I don't mind fighting with my fists. And I don't mean now. Now I like peace. I worked in a high school, and whenever the kids were fighting, I wasn't supposed to touch them, but I often would, because I didn't like to see fighting. But when I was small, hit him, go ahead. That's right, up. And I would be at the side doing like this while they're fighting. And I'm blocking. Just like if I was in there, I just enjoyed it. But I don't get dangerous until I see that you have something that can hurt me. Maybe a stick, knife, or something else. Then I feel, wow, I'm in danger. So it's not just a matter of just trying to protect myself now. Now I feel I have to hurt you. Not that I'm good at it. If I told you I was good at it, I'm a coward by nature. That's why I feel I have to hurt you. So when I say that if I was David and you came after me with 3,000 men getting ready to kill me, and I had the opportunity, you weren't walking out of that cave. And I have all good reasons. My friends are encouraging me. They're telling me it's what the Lord ordained. I know that the Lord anointed me. I know he has rejected you. You're after me. I have all good reasons to justify taking you. But David had to fight with his men to keep them from killing Saul when he would. He tells him, I didn't understand this. He cut off a little piece of his garment and he was grief-stricken. That wasn't like a hand or something. Peter cut that guy's ear off, and I don't think Peter was grief-stricken. So, David goes out and he talks to Saul. You need to read the story yourself, because I don't like to read, and you need to get a fuller understanding. So then David, while she's in the wilderness, I'm sorry, gotta remember this is being recorded. David protects Nabal's flocks and his people. He hears that Nabal is now going to have a celebration, a party, if you would, when all the crops come in, big celebration. When all the flocks are ready, big celebration. So he sends his people and he says, very humble manner, do you give my men anything that you feel like? I've looked after your people. I've kept them safe. You'd have lost far more than you could have given to us. But whatever is in your heart, send something for us. We're not doing well out here. And Nabal sends back insults. Boy, that's the next thing. My pride. I think I've told people, I say, you can tell me anything you want to my face, as long as I feel that you're not trying to hurt me. In other words, destroy my pride. If your heart is right, no problem. Then you can tell me the smallest thing, but I think you're trying to hurt my pride, then I get mad. So David got mad when the insults came back. I have protected this man. I've wasted my time protecting this man and his property. I'm going down there and I'm going to fix him up. Somebody goes back to Nabal's wife, Abigail, and says, we're in danger. And this guy knew he was in danger, because they knew about David and they knew what he was capable of. And sure enough, she decides to correct it. And as she's on her way to meet David, David is on his way to kill her husband and all his male servants. She comes to him very graciously. She bows down before she gets close to him to the ground. And she begs him. One thing she said in the begging, she says, you are a man who fights God's battles. God's battles, not your own battle. What was God's battles back then? It was fighting for God's nation. And that becomes a key verse for you and I today. Because the reason that we find ourselves in the fire, boiling, is because we shift our focus from God's battles to our battles. So you hurt my feelings, huh? Whose battle is that? You know, in Romans, I think it's 6 and verse 7, it says, he who is dead is freed from sin, one of my favorite texts. When I'm dead, which I'm supposed to do in Jesus, you can say what you want about it. It doesn't bother me. The only time I should get excited or hot and bothered is when you do something here that makes the Lord look bad. Because I remember early in my relationship here, someone came here and did something strong. I'm trying not to get too specific. And one of the members here said to me, I'm sorry. And I said, there's no reason to be sorry. I'm in this. I saw myself as part of this church. So I felt if there was anybody to be apologized to, it would be anybody who was visiting, especially a non-Adventist. But for me, I'm part of the family. It didn't bother me in that sense. It would bother me about whoever was visiting. That I was concerned about. So when I'm dead, I'm fighting God's battle. David is fighting God's battle. When I'm alive, and it's about my children, boy dropped David on his head. My wife, my pride, anything that has to do with I and mine, and it's all about that I'm fighting about, I become the one who's making God look bad. And God says as much to David somewhere else. He says, you have given ammunition against the enemies of God. And we do, and I've said this before. We claim the name of Christ, and then we go and we behave badly. Up to recently, somebody told me about something that happened to me. Let me tell you this real quick. My mother was a Catholic. She died a Catholic. I grew up. My mother could tell you something about every religion, it seems like, and why she wouldn't get involved with it. You know what she told me about an Adventist? She says, Adventism? You're one of them. She says, when you were a little boy, and I left Trinidad when I was 14. So it must have been much younger than that. And she was building a house. In the West Indies, we build houses a little bit at a time. Put up the big structure, and then you add a little bedroom here and until you finish. She says, I gave an Adventist $500 to put on do some plaster work for me. Next thing you know, he went to America with my money. Adventist? And I'm sure that has happened. I know stories. I've been around Adventism for like 42 years now. So after a while, you get accustomed to the stories. They're not good stories. I was part of one of those stories. Seriously. I told you it's about me. Listen, there was a time my first marriage broke up badly. A lot had to do with me. But when I came out of that marriage, I said, marriage? A friend of mine said this. Marriage has teeth. I don't know if you get that. He promised a girl to marry her. And when the girl says, so what are you waiting for? He said to her, marriage has teeth. That means it bites. So he was running in the next direction. Well, I came out of that relationship and I said, marriage has teeth. I don't want any relationship that deep. I don't mind casual dating and stuff, but no marriage. Pastor looked at me one day and he says, I need to talk to you. I said, okay. Because I was young and brash then, and it's like, you want to talk? Let's talk. But, I'll do what I need to do. The Lord brought me to conviction after that day. But that's after that I couldn't keep living. And it wasn't long after I met my wife. My wife and I think we've been, this month we're going to have 21 years. But we have probably been together without me seeing anyone else or desiring anyone else for 25 years. And every time I told her this morning, sometimes I just sit there, and I told them Wednesday, I just sit there and I look over at my wife as I'm looking at Kathy, and I just love her. And I am very thankful for that. That's what I told them Wednesday. Because you know something? You can find yourself in a relationship with someone. And if you do, you start seeing all the little faults. I don't know, she don't tell me much about my faults unless I speak here, and then she says, put your foot in your mouth, that. So I don't know, I guess I'll be hearing about that later. And I always let people know that Ali is nice and reserved, but I think she's passive aggressive. That means she gets her points through. It's just passively, but they get through. I just talk. I'm not trying to paint her black. She's all right. And I'm really thankful for that. I've had a friend who said to me, and this is not going into Ali, I'm coming right back. When he first met me, which is a little over, maybe about 12 years ago, and he saw Ali, he says, how did you manage to marry her? It's like he was looking at her without eyes of love and he didn't see anything. He didn't see a connection. Those same friends say to me now, why? The blessings of the Lord. Once as you get to know her, the blessings of the Lord. My brother who died said, boy, you slipped and you came up smelling like a rose. He just loved that. And And generally, that's the reaction people have to her. I don't know why I went there, but I'm coming right back. See, I used to have someone, that same lady I was talking about, who would bring me back to my subject. And you can feel comfortable doing that. I'm not offended. So, Abigail comes and she speaks to David. She reverences him, if you would, and she begs him. She says to him, you're fighting God's battles, which is where I left off. Don't fight your own battles. Let the Lord fight your battles for you. And he listens to her. And he says to the effect, praise God for sending you to me today. Because had you not come, Nabal and all the men of his household would be dead by sunrise. It is the Lord who has sent you to keep me from avenging myself. Listen to it. Now listen to this real quick. I want to draw a connection. His men said to him, kill Saul. God sent him here for such a time as this. And he didn't do it. Abigail comes around and she says, don't kill my husband. He's a fool. And that's what his name means. But you're a better man than this. You're fighting God's battles. And he listens to her. So he didn't listen to one and he listens to the next. Chapter 26, my last chapter. Definitely going to be finishing it. I'm obsessive. You know, when we're dealing with character, which is what I'm really dealing with here in a roundabout way, it follows us. You're a thief. You may put off stealing something you see here, but a little later on today or maybe tomorrow you're going to see something else and you will steal it because that's who you are. That's what follows you. And character is consistent. And I've said this before here. Saul, after realizing David had spared his life, he felt sorry for the moment. Character follows. That's the point. Not long after that, somebody tells Saul, David is over there. And Saul is still obsessing over David. Hearing about David's exploits and wanting the glory that is being ascribed to David, he decides he's going to go kill him again. So he took his men and he went out to a mountainous region. And whilst he was there, as nightfall came, they decided to rest. David decided to go down and see where Saul was. He took a few men. He said to them, who's going to go down with me into the camp of Saul? And I believe 2 of them volunteered. They went down into the camp of Saul. This time, his friend says to him, he didn't ask David because he knew David didn't want him. David was like me. I want to kill something that's out in the wild if you let it go. Only if it's a danger to you. Saul is on the ground and he's no protection. And the guy didn't say to David, this is the time that God has lined him up for you again. He said, let me kill him. He says, I'm going to strike him once, and I will not strike him a second time. I will pin him to the ground. Well, that would have took it off of David's hands. After all, he didn't do it. But David says, you can't lift your hand by the Lord's anointing and be guiltless. You just can't do it. He says God is going to take care of him in his own time and in his own way, but not me. I'm not going to do it. So he takes his water jug and he takes his spear and he goes to the next side of the mountains and he calls out. He says, Abner, you deserve to die. You didn't protect your Lord. That's your job. But if you've read further in that chapter, you would see it says that God caused deep sleep to fall on Saul, as he did in the the cave also. Because when you're men of war, any little rustling in the grass usually wakes you up. Because you're on high alert, your adrenaline is pumping even when you feel fairly well protected. Because you know who you're about to face. And he knew. He knew about David. He's David. Saul wanted to destroy David. And so Saul says, I need the foreskins of 100 Philistines. He was hoping that David would go in there and the Philistines would kill him. David went in there, one man, and brought out, I believe he brought out 2. So why am I saying this? Saul is not relaxed. He knew who he was dealing with. 1 man, 200, 600 men, he and his 3,000. And knowing who was on his side, God was on his side. Shannon. He was in. That was God. He says to him, Saul, been listening to around. I have no ill will towards you. He said, oh, that's my son David. He says, you have been good to me, and I have been nothing but evil to you. He said, I will not follow you again. I'll let the pastor tell the rest of the story, because that's his chapter next week. Character follows us. The only time that character changes within our lives, and I've told the stories, I didn't read them. I'm glad it was read from them, because I don't like to stop to read. As I said, the only time that character changes us is when God comes into our lives and make the change. Otherwise, the change is not permanent. It's a facade. It's like a suit that we put on. Notice I like to take my suit off, because down here it's hot. It doesn't make sense. It's a good thing I didn't take my shoes off. When I'm sitting back there, I take my shoes off too. So you're spared. So, character. When we read this story, I'm wrapping up now. We look at Saul and David, and we all choose to be like David. Except it doesn't happen by osmosis. It doesn't come through the ear. We don't just go into the Word and somehow the Spirit comes in and everything is good. Have you ever heard Unshackled, where the guy meets Jesus and everything is good the next day? He's all the Christian he needs to be? No. Sanctification, work of a lifetime. And we must be involved with it. It's not passive, it's active. You can't get there from here if you're passive. You can't be like David simply by wishing. Wishing will get you nothing. Wanting, on the other hand, will get you something. What's the difference between a wish and a want? Wanting is something that you're willing to do something about. Wishing is, I'm trying to think. I wish for good grades, but I don't go home and study. I don't go to class and participate. I want to be like the head nurse. And I don't look at her to see what she does and how she does it and why she does it, so that I can pick up that knowledge and grow to be like that. Do I want to be a good mechanic? Do I just go to the junkyard and start taking cars apart? Or do I start picking the brains of good men? Do I want to be a good Christian and simply wish and not having Jesus being a part of this process? Fellowship has a lot to do with how much we grow to be what God would have us to be. You can't stay home and listen to a program on the TV or on the radio and become a great Christian. Or even a good one, I'm sorry. It doesn't work. Sometimes it takes the rubbing of the brethren, and I hope you understand what rubbing means in that sense. It means like sandpaper, to help you to develop the type of character that you need to develop. But it's also those same brethren that will help you when you're down and you're depressed and you want to give up. They're the ones that also hold you up. So it's a twofold thing. It also takes not just what we do here, but what we do when we leave here. One of the things that has disturbed me since I've come down here is that I haven't really done anything in the street. I started walking this neighborhood with the idea of meeting people that I need to do. Because what you do in church is not sufficient. We're trying to develop a character like God's. And it says, you have to work with me so that I can make you what you ought to be. I think we need to stop relying on the lying excuses that we use for our bad behavior. I know you know the biggest one. I am only, I heard it, and I heard it several times, human. My behavior, I got to play with that. My behavior, I justify it, or I excuse it by saying I'm only human. Why? Because humans hear only God is perfect. Well, God is calling us to perfection. If you're an Adventist, you know that. He is not calling us, and He will finish the perfection, but it requires cooperation on your part along the way. What does cooperation look like? God gave David 2 opportunities thus far to kill Saul, and 1 for Nabal. Which one did he take? None. You know why? Character is following him. It was in his character to be like his God, whom he had mentioned. Somewhere else it talks about when he says, I don't want to really go there, but he says, I will fall on the hand of God because God is merciful. Man isn't. So after viewing the character of God, he started to become more like God. He didn't become perfect overnight. That's why I chose David, because he wasn't perfect. But his character showed consistency with the way he dealt with things. He was merciful. That was based on spending time with God. I am hoping by spending more time with Ali that I'll be more like her. It hasn't worked so far. At least I haven't seen it. And spending time with Jesus, that I would become much more like him. Another excuse that we make is the devil made me do it. That was a show on the television, Flip Wilson. And every time he did something wrong, he would say, the devil made me do it. It was always the devil. It was always somebody else's fault. You know, I was telling my wife this week, I said the difference between my older brother and I is that after my first marriage failed, I took a lot of responsibility for what happened. And I did. I bore a lot of the responsibility. All wasn't mine, but I took more than I knew I deserved. But I took. And so, with God's help, Aliyah and I have been together for 25 years. That's with God's help. Now, I have a brother who, I don't know if he was divorced before me, but certainly he was separated from his wife before me. And if you speak to him tomorrow, he would tell you, Andrea this, Andrea this. She turned the children against me. She did this. He's obsessing with Andrea. So he never moved on and he never grew. I am not trying to make him look bad so that I can look good. What am I saying? If you obsess over the wrong thing and you don't look to God, you can't grow. You could keep blaming the devil, you could keep blaming somebody else, but it's your skin you have to live in. Not only that, not only would you live in this skin, but when God finally decides to save his children, what are you going to say to him? I'm not all that I needed to be because my neighbors, the devil, or like Adam, the woman you gave me, it was she who caused me to sin. Does that any of that fly with God? It doesn't. Because like David, he's going to give you ample opportunities to grow in Jesus. But as long as you want to make excuses, reason and justify your behavior, you can't grow. So when I look at myself critically. I hope more critically than you do. And I know where I'm falling short. I know sometimes I answer my wife and I answer the answer is short and it cuts. I was telling her this week something that she did something to me in the street, and I said to her, I can share this because I'm sorry. I'm just sharing it because I like to be real. I said, if you're going to leave your mind at home, you need to stay home with it. You know, at the time, it just flew out. My mouth doesn't always have a cover, but I started to feel bad about it, and that's why I spoke about it. If I start feeling bad about something, I speak about it. I don't just stuff it in the back and say, all right, it's going to go away, it's going to go away. I spoke about it. And that's my way of telling her that I'm sorry about it. But I don't believe I ever looked at her in the eye and said, I'm sorry about it. Listen, there's an old song that says, the end. You can get it if you really want. You can get it. What is it in this case? I'm speaking about a Christian character. A character like David's and not like Saul. You can get it if you really want, but you must try. And funny, the song goes in, try and try, and you'll succeed at last. I saw something, the guy who has Honda Motor Company, he said, success is 99% failure. Success is 99% failure. The difference is, with 99% failure, you know, I would have probably given up if I had failed 99 times. But I failed a lot more than 99 times in this Christian walk. And I don't plan to give up. How about you? Are you going to give up? Are you going to rest? Are you going to just be comfortable with who you are because your neighbors think you're nice? Or because the church members think you're nice? Or are you going to say, let me look at myself through the eyes that God would look at me? Loving eyes. Eyes of compassion that wants to make you more than you are because He wants to take you home for eternity. He wants you to be a blessing to others now. Or you can say, like a log in the river, I'll just float, whichever the wind blows. I'm just going to go with it. The choice is yours. And it is a choice. It's a choice that you have actively involved in. If you're not active, might as well be like the stick that they throw in the river and just watch. When a wave comes, it goes this way. Next wave, that way. Current comes, it goes that way. It's always going somewhere, but it has no will of its own. This life in Jesus requires a will from you. It requires your permission for God to act in your life and your participation so that He can make you what He wants. I like Peter's a nice name. Finished with this. Peter said he would die with Jesus, didn't he? When he got the opportunity, not only did he deny Him, just to be known not as a Christian, because people know that Christians don't cuss the place down. Always. He cussed the place down for them, he wasn't a Christian. But the story didn't end there. He failed at 99 times. By the time Jesus came back, Peter was growing in everything that he needed to. And if you read the New Testament, you will find out he and Paul had a nice big drag-out battle. So it didn't end when Jesus came back. He continued to grow. I want to encourage you this afternoon. Not give up when you see flaws in your character, but instead resolve to allow God to work with you to make you the person that you need to be. He will help you. You can trust him. He will save you. It's up to you. It's your choice. I thank you. This is something new to me, so I wasn't even sure when it needed to be done. But we have here a connect card.